Sophia pressed her hand against her chest as the doctor stepped out of the ICU. Her mother whispered in fear. "It's too late. Your father signed the papers." Her father had refused her surgery, claimed it was a waste of money, and to make matters worse, he had already signed a DNR for her, ensuring he could inherit the $15 million meant for her. Tears burned Sophia's eyes, but beneath the fear, a spark ignited. If he thinks he can control me, he's about to regret it. Sophia woke up excited on her 28th birthday, thinking today would be full of smiles, cake, and happy moments. Her friends and family were around, singing and laughing, and for a second, she felt safe and loved. But that happiness shattered in one sentence from her father. He looked at her coldly and said, "We won't waste money on your surgery. Let her pass." Her heart stopped. The room felt silent, even though everyone else pretended nothing was wrong. Her mother's eyes filled with fear, and the doctor, standing quietly, hinted that her condition was very serious. Every moment mattered. Sophia felt a mix of fear, confusion, and shock. How could the people who were supposed to protect her, love her, and care for her, just let her die? Tears stung her eyes, but inside, a small spark of determination flickered. She realized this was no ordinary betrayal. It was a test of her strength. Today, the people who were meant to be her safe place had become the reason she might not survive. And in that moment, amid balloons and broken smiles, Sophia knew one thing for certain. She could not stay powerless. Something inside her shifted. Fear was there, yes, but it was now joined by anger and a quiet resolve. If they thought she would give up, they were wrong. Her birthday had turned into a moment that would change her life forever. The laughter faded, replaced by a deep awareness that nothing would ever be the same. She felt the weight of her father's words, heavy and cruel, but somewhere beneath the pain she found the first flicker of courage. Sophia's world had shattered, but that crack would be where her strength began. Today she understood the harsh truth. The people who were supposed to fight for her life had chosen to let her fall, and now, she had to fight for herself. That one birthday, meant for joy, became the day she realized she could no longer rely on anyone but herself, and that realization, painful as it was, lit a fire inside her that would never go out. Sophia woke up in a cold hospital room, her body weak and trembling, not fully understanding how serious everything had become. She could barely move, and the machines around her beeped steadily, reminding her that every second mattered. Doctors and nurses moved quickly, but there was a tension in the air she couldn't understand. That's when Baiko, her best friend, came rushing in, face pale but determined. He whispered urgently that her father had signed something called a DNR, a paper that meant the hospital could not treat her fully without his permission. Her heart sank. She had thought her family would fight for her, that they would be on her side, but now she realized they had set a trap. Baiko explained quietly that her father had been trying to claim her inheritance even before this moment. He had secretly done all the legal work to make sure the $15 million would go to him if anything happened to her. Sophia felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. She was weak, lying in a hospital bed, and at the same time, her father's betrayal meant that she could be left to die, helplessly. Every moment became a race against time. She had to survive, but she also had to find a way to fight back. Her mind, foggy from pain and medicine, slowly started thinking clearly. She realized that surviving this was only the first step. Once she opened her eyes fully, she could not go back to being powerless, not when her life and her future were at stake. She imagined a world where she could turn everything around, where her father's plans would fail, and where she could take control of what was hers. The thought gave her a strange strength, a fire in her chest that pushed against the weakness in her body. Even as her veins felt drained, and every breath hurt, she refused to give in. She knew that if she made it through this, her life would never be the same. She would have to fight smarter, act faster, and never trust the people who had tried to manipulate her. Baiko stayed by her side, quietly promising to help her, and in that small, tense room, a plan began to form in Sophia's mind. She was powerless now, yes, but the smallest spark of hope had lit a fire. The hospital became her battlefield, not with swords or guns, but with courage, determination, and the will to survive against betrayal and deceit. And deep inside, Sophia knew one thing clearly. If she survived this secret war, nothing would ever be the same again. As Sophia lay unconscious, Her mind drifted into a strange dream where her life was full of light and happiness, a life she thought she would have. In the dream, she laughed freely, walked through her own home, and imagined a future she had worked so hard to build. But suddenly, the dream twisted, dark shadows creeping in, cutting her bright world short. She felt a terrible emptiness, as if someone had reached in and tried to take everything from her before she could even live it. Meanwhile, Baiko was working tirelessly beside her hospital bed. He had discovered a series of emails her father had sent, emails hidden carefully, showing the full picture of the betrayal. It was not just about refusing the surgery, it was much bigger. Her father had planned to take her inheritance, manipulating legal documents, threatening people who could help, and even rewriting parts of her will without her knowledge. Every detail Baiko uncovered made the betrayal feel heavier, sharper, like a knife pressing against her heart, even while she slept. When Safia finally stirred and caught fragments of Baiko's words, the shock hit her fully. She was not just someone being ignored or mistreated, she was a target. Her father had plotted to control her life, her health, and her money all at once. Fear surged through her, freezing her in panic for a moment. But then beneath the fear, something else grew. A quiet, fierce resolve. She realized that this was not a moment to stay weak. If she survived, she could take back everything that had been stolen or threatened. She could expose the lies, undo the manipulation, and secure her future for herself. The weight of the discovery gave her clarity. Every smile, every happy memory, every plan she had dreamed of was not gone. They were hers to fight for. And as the first tears slid down her cheeks, they were not only for the betrayal, but for the fire it ignited inside her. She would survive this. She would rise from the shadows her father tried to throw over her life. She would not just exist, she would reclaim everything that was meant to be hers. And in that moment, a spark turned into a flame. A determination so strong that even her weakest body could feel it. Safia was no longer just a daughter. She was a fighter, and this fight was only just beginning. Safia opened her eyes slowly, the bright hospital lights burning her tired eyes. Her body felt heavy and weak, every breath a struggle, but she was alive. The doctors moved carefully around her, monitoring her vitals, whispering to each other about how lucky she was to survive. The DNR her father had signed should have stopped her from getting the care she needed, yet somehow she had made it through. Relief mixed with confusion, and then Baiko came close, his face serious. He held her hand gently, and began to explain everything. Her father had not just refused her surgery, he had tried to control her entire life, her money, her future. Every word hit her like a punch. Her hands trembled, but not from weakness. They shook with a burning, fierce anger, the kind that could not be ignored. The betrayal was enormous, the depth of it shocking, but in that moment, Safia felt something else growing inside her. She was no longer just a victim lying in a hospital bed. She was a person who had been tested and survived. Baiko's words made it clear. Her father thought he could scare her, control her, and use money and power to make her weak. But he had miscalculated. The fear that should have crushed her had transformed into fuel. Safia began to see the first spark of a plan, the tiniest seed of what would become her revenge. She did not want to lash out recklessly, but she knew she had to act. Every detail of her father's betrayal, every secret attempt to manipulate her, had planted this fire. She could almost feel it spreading, giving her strength despite her weak body. For the first time since she had arrived in the ICU, she felt a sense of clarity. She understood that surviving was only the beginning. The next step was reclaiming control over her life, and showing her father that his power could not touch her. Even in her fragile state, her mind raced with possibilities. The hospital room no longer felt like a place of weakness. It was the starting point of her comeback. Safia's eyes, though tired and red, shone with determination. She would not forgive easily, and she would not forget. The first seed of revenge had been planted that day, quietly, inside her. It was small now, but she knew it would grow into something unstoppable. And in that moment, lying in a bed that had almost become her prison, Safia promised herself that she would turn this betrayal into her greatest victory. As soon as Safia left the hospital, weak but determined, she knew she needed more than anger to fight back. She needed power, knowledge, and strategy. Baiko helped her find a lawyer, someone sharp, experienced, and careful, who would handle everything quietly without alerting her father. The lawyer immediately began digging into every detail: wills, contracts, property papers, bank accounts, and any loopholes her father had used to try and claim her inheritance early. Every document told a story, and slowly Sophia began to understand just how deep her father's betrayal went. He had thought he was untouchable, that no one could question his moves or stop him from taking what he wanted. But he had underestimated Sophia. Every day, she and her lawyer discovered new cracks, missed signatures, hidden agreements, legal mistakes her father had made in his rush to secure her money. With each discovery, Sophia felt her confidence grow. The fear and weakness from the hospital faded, replaced by clarity and focus. She wasn't just reacting anymore. She was planning, calculating, and striking in silence. Her father, proud and arrogant, believed he still controlled everything. He had no idea that his own daughter was quietly turning his plans against him, building a case that could ruin his reputation and prevent him from taking a single cent of what belonged to her. Sophia moved carefully, making sure every step was perfect. Every piece of evidence collected, every loophole exposed, was like a brick in the foundation of her new strength. She realized that this battle was not about revenge in the usual sense. It was about justice, about reclaiming what was hers and showing that betrayal had consequences. The more she uncovered, the more she felt the power shift quietly in her favor. Her father's empire, which had always seemed solid and untouchable, was full of weak spots that he never noticed. Sophia didn't need to shout or confront him yet. She let the law work for her, letting each discovery quietly chip away at his confidence and control. By the time she was ready to make her move, she had built a fortress of evidence so strong that her father could not ignore it or escape it. She was no longer the powerless daughter he had tried to control. She was a strategist, a fighter, and the rightful heir to everything he had tried to take. And in that quiet, careful preparation, Sophia felt a deep satisfaction, the first real sense of control she had ever felt over her life and her future. Sophia stepped into a world she had only watched from the sidelines before. She started attending board meetings, auctions, and investment gatherings, places her father had always dominated, assuming everyone would follow his lead. She didn't arrive with loud clothes or sparkling jewelry. She didn't announce herself. She simply observed, listened, and spoke when it mattered. Every word she said carried thought and weight, even if quiet. Slowly, people began to notice. The same men and women who had dismissed her before, thinking she was just the obedient, powerless daughter, started to pay attention. They saw her sharp mind, her clear understanding of business, and the courage in her decisions. Her presence was subtle, almost invisible, but it had power. Deals she suggested started gaining traction. Her opinions were respected. Invitations that once would have been impossible now came naturally. Her father, who had always believed he controlled everything, began to sense the shift. He noticed people listening to her advice, taking her seriously, and even questioning his own opinions. He had assumed that fear and money alone could keep everyone loyal. But Sophia proved that intelligence, calm confidence, and patience were stronger than arrogance and threats. Every meeting became a stage where she quietly built influence, growing stronger without confrontation. She didn't need to challenge her father openly yet. The power was accumulating silently, in ways he could not immediately see. Each new connection she made, each strategy she introduced, chipped away at the authority he thought was absolute. Slowly, his empire, once unshakable, began to show cracks. Sophia thrived in these shadows, moving where he had never imagined a daughter could. Her growth was unnoticed by him at first, which gave her the advantage. She learned who could be trusted, who could be persuaded, and who was willing to follow real talent rather than fear. Her influence expanded quietly but steadily, and with each passing day, her father's control grew weaker. He had built everything on the belief that power came from money and fear, but Sophia showed that true influence could grow from intellect, courage, and patience. And while he still underestimated her, the world around him was slowly changing. She was no longer just a girl he could dismiss. She was becoming someone unstoppable, someone capable of reshaping the world he thought he owned. In silence, without noise or spectacle, Sophia was taking control of her life, and of everything her father had tried to dominate, one careful, powerful step at a time. The day of the family gathering arrived, and Safia walked into the grand hall looking calm, healthy and completely in control. The chandeliers sparkled above, and the room buzzed with chatter, but all eyes slowly turned toward her. Her father sat at the head of the table, smirking, confident that she would cry, beg, or apologize just like he expected. But Safia did none of that. She took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice steady and strong. She revealed everything she had uncovered. The signed DNR that had almost ended her life, the secret attempts to take her inheritance, the lies her father had told to manipulate everyone around him. One by one, she laid out the evidence, each document and fact carefully presented, leaving no room for excuses. The room fell silent, then erupted into murmurs of shock. Relatives whispered among themselves, some looking horrified, some confused, trying to process what they had just heard. Some began taking sides, realizing the father they had always trusted had betrayed his own daughter. Safia's smile grew slowly, quietly, as she watched the reactions. She didn't need to yell, cry, or plead. The power in her presence, in her truth, spoke louder than any words of anger. Her father's smirk faded as he realized that the authority he had wielded for years was gone. He tried to interrupt, to argue, to intimidate, but Safia remained composed, unfazed by his attempts. Each revelation, each piece of proof, reversed the control he thought he had. The family he had relied on for loyalty now looked to Safia with respect, awe, and even fear of the consequences of his betrayal. He understood, finally, that the daughter he had tried to suppress was no longer powerless. She had survived, uncovered the truth, and turned his own schemes against him. The room was filled with tension, whispers, and astonishment, and Safia stood in the center, calm, smiling, and victorious. For the first time, she felt the shift completely. She was no longer the obedient child. She was the one with control, the one with power. Her father's authority had crumbled entirely, and everyone could see it. Safia didn't need to raise her voice. The truth alone had spoken. The family gathering that was meant to celebrate or intimidate her had become the moment where everything changed. She had taken back what was hers, not with anger or force, but with courage, intelligence, and the quiet strength of someone who had refused to be broken. In that room, surrounded by family, Safia finally saw the outcome of all her struggle. The balance of power had shifted, and she was the one in charge. After the family confrontation, Safia moved quietly but carefully, making sure every legal step was perfect. She and her lawyer double-checked every document, every signature, every clause, leaving nothing that her father could use to challenge her. She did not rush or make a scene. She worked patiently, methodically, ensuring that her victory would be complete and undeniable. Meanwhile, news of her father's actions and the evidence she had revealed began to spread through family circles and slowly into the business community. People who had once respected him without question now looked at him differently. His reputation, carefully built over years, began to crumble as whispers of betrayal and manipulation reached the ears of colleagues, partners, and investors. Safia watched silently as the consequences of his choices unfolded. She didn't have to shout or seek revenge. Every move she made, every decision, every calm action carried a quiet power. It was clear to everyone paying attention that she was no longer a powerless daughter, but a woman who had survived betrayal, exposed lies, and claimed what was rightfully hers. Her inheritance, the money and assets that had been threatened, was now fully secured. There was no doubt about it. She had fought for it with patience, intelligence, and courage, not with anger or public drama. Safia's triumph did not need to be loud or flashy. Each time she signed a new contract, attended a business meeting, or invested in a project, her presence sent a clear message. Betrayal has consequences. Those who thought they could manipulate her or take what was hers learned, silently and powerfully, that she was unstoppable. She didn't have to humiliate her father, argue in public, or create scandal. The truth itself had done all the work, and Safia felt a deep satisfaction in that quiet victory. She realized that real power was not in revenge, not in making others suffer, but in standing tall, claiming what is yours, and letting justice unfold naturally. Every step she took now, whether small or large, reinforced her independence, her strength, and her ability to control her own life. Friends and colleagues admired her, and even strangers began to respect her for the courage and intelligence she had shown. Safia didn't need applause or acknowledgement to know that she had won. The world had watched, learned, and respected her resilience. Betrayal had tried to break her, but she had turned it into her greatest triumph. The lesson was clear, for her and everyone who witnessed her journey: standing firm, being smart, and keeping your dignity intact is the most powerful victory of all. Safia had survived, she had reclaimed her life, and she had done it in a way that could never be taken away. Safia sat quietly in her new office, looking out at the city below, thinking about everything she had been through. Years of manipulation, lies, and control had left deep marks, but they also taught her lessons she would never forget. She realized that the real inheritance she had gained was not just the money her father tried to take, but her own strength, cleverness, and the ability to handle any challenge life threw at her. Every betrayal she faced, every lie told to her, had built her into someone who could survive and thrive even when the odds were against her. She had learned who truly cared for her, and who only pretended. From now on, she would reconnect only with people who respected her boundaries, people who valued her for who she was, not for what she could give them. The fear she had once felt toward her father, the anxiety that had haunted her for years, was gone. His silence now felt hollow, empty, and meaningless. He no longer had the power to scare her, control her, or make her doubt herself. She had survived his worst schemes and turned the situation into her own victory. Safia also understood that life could be unpredictable, and not everyone who seemed trustworthy would always act in your best interest. But she had grown wise, careful, and patient. Each decision she made now was guided by her own judgment, not by the expectations or manipulations of others. Her life, once full of fear and dependence, was now entirely hers. She had rebuilt it brick by brick, carefully, patiently, and with purpose. No longer shaken by the people who tried to break her, she had created a world where she was in control. She could make choices freely, invest in her future, and live with confidence and peace. Looking back, the pain, the struggles, and the moments of betrayal felt like a distant storm she had survived. They had shaped her, but they no longer defined her. Safia smiled quietly, feeling proud of herself. She understood that her journey had given her something far more valuable than money. A life built on courage, wisdom, and self-respect. The people who had tried to control her no longer had any hold over her. Every wall she had climbed, every obstacle she had overcome, was a testament to her resilience. Safia knew that no one could take away her sense of self or the life she had built. She was free, powerful, and in control, and that freedom, that confidence, was the greatest reward of all. Safia stepped into her new penthouse, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The space was hers, every detail chosen by her, every corner a reflection of her hard work, patience, and vision. There were no apologies to be made, no charities to announce, no performances for anyone else. This was quiet power, the kind that comes from surviving, from earning every victory with your own strength. She poured herself a cup of tea and settled by the window, the warmth comforting her as she opened a stack of documents that had once felt like weapons, proof of betrayal, threats, and schemes meant to take her life and her future. Now those same papers were reminders of her courage, her resilience, and the careful steps that had turned danger into triumph. She whispered softly to herself, almost like a promise. I survived what they wanted to end. Now everything I touch is mine. The words felt heavy with truth, with the knowledge that she no longer relied on anyone's mercy or approval. Her story was not about revenge or showing anyone else that she had won. It was about reclaiming her life, her dignity, and the legacy that had been threatened for so long. Safia had built something far greater than money or influence. She had built freedom, independence, and a peace that no one could take from her. For the first time, she allowed herself to smile fully, without restraint or hesitation. It was a smile born of triumph, clarity, and self-respect, a smile that celebrated the woman she had become through fire, struggle, and unwavering determination. Every battle, every betrayal, and every sleepless night had led to this moment, and she embraced it completely. The city stretched below, alive and bustling, but Safia felt serene, untouchable, and firmly in control of her world. This was her life, entirely hers, shaped by her choices and fortified by her courage. No one could rewrite her story now. Sitting there with her tea, the quiet hum of the city around her, she felt the deep satisfaction of having survived, grown stronger, and reclaimed everything that was ever meant for her. In that silence, that calm, she finally understood. Real power isn't loud or vengeful. It is knowing you are untouchable in your own truth. And Safia had found that.